The rain had finally subsided, leaving behind humid air and the faint scent of Arizona desert soil lingering in the breeze. Jack Thompson, at 55, was still struggling with a broken fence section when the familiar sound of footsteps made him look up. Max, his 7-year-old German Shepherd, had been missing for several hours, something that rarely happened since the pair had moved to this spacious property in the remote countryside. Jack's heart seemed to stop at the sight before him. Max hadn't returned alone. Behind the soaking, wet mud-covered dog were 2 small brown-yellow creatures, also drenched in muddy, stumbling along after him. 2 Sean cubs, no more than 6 to 8 weeks old, looking exhausted and frightened. "Good heavens!" Jack exclaimed, dropping his hammer. After 30 years working in wildlife rescue centers, he immediately recognized them as purebred African lions, an extremely rare find in this region. Maxie stopped about 10 paces from Jack, looking at his master with eyes that were both exhausted and proud. The lion cubs immediately collapsed to the ground, panting heavily, mud-caked on their delicate fur. When Jack approached, something unexpected happened. Max growled softly, a sound he had never made toward Jack before. He moved to one side, positioning himself between Jack and the lion cubs. The message was clear. They were under his protection. Jack backed away, observing the muddy footprints. He realized Max must have followed the trail along the stream that had risen due to the heavy rain. Years of experience told him these cubs didn't belong here. They must have come from somewhere further away and under unusual circumstances. Jack's razor-sharp gaze swept the surrounding area, looking for any sign of a mother lioness or other lions. But there was only the wind whistling through the cola bushes and the sound of water rushing from the nearby stream. These cubs had clearly been abandoned or lost, and Max had somehow found them. He opened the door to the shed that had been converted into a workspace, motioning for Max. Surprisingly, the lion cubs seemed to understand. They staggered to their feet, continuing to follow Max inside. Jack took out his phone and called Sarah Reeves, a former colleague at the Wildlife Protection Agency. "Jack, you won't believe this," Sarah said after hearing Jack's story. "We just received a report about an illegal animal transport truck that flipped over while trying to cross the flooded stream about 5 mi from your house. Police found some animals, but many are still missing." The pieces started to fit together in Jack's mind. Wildlife traffickers, the plague he had fought throughout his career, must have been trying to transport these cubs illegally. The rain and rising water had created a rare escape opportunity for these little creatures. When Sarah offered to come pick up the cubs immediately, Jack looked at Max. The dog had lain down beside them, licking the mud from their fur with remarkable dedication. "Sarah, I think we have a problem," Jack said. "Max has adopted them as his own." Jack explained that Max had established a protective bond with the cubs, and separating them immediately could cause stress for both. With his extensive experience with animals, he convinced Sarah to let him temporarily care for them for a few days until they were strong enough to be transported. Sarah reluctantly agreed, but warned that this was only a temporary solution. 3 days, Jack, no more, and I need daily updates. After hanging up, Jack began searching through his old cabinets for necessary supplies. He took out some formula bottles for carnivores, a basic medical kit, and thick blankets. With the care of a surgeon, he prepared a warm, safe space in the corner of the shed, laying out the softest blankets he could find. When he returned, Jack found Max had already arranged the cubs in a corner where they were protected and warm. The dog was cleaning the mud from their fur, his movements gentle and patient like those of a mother. Leo and Theo, names that Jack would soon give them, had fallen asleep from exhaustion, their tiny bodies curled up next to Max, seeking warmth and safety. Jack watched Max gently caring for the lion cubs. He wondered if 3 days would be enough. Looking into Max's steadfast eyes, Jack knew the dog had made his decision, and nothing seemed able to change that. The first night passed in constant vigilance. Jack slept on the old armchair in the shed, waking at every sound, ready to intervene if necessary. But Max had the situation perfectly under control, meeting every need of the cubs with amazing natural instinct. When Leo woke up and began to whimper from hunger, Max immediately woke Jack, leading him to the prepared bottle. Desert dawn filtered through the door cracks, signaling a new day. Jack woke to find Max had led Leo and Theo outside, teaching them how to take care of business in appropriate places, a behavior Jack never thought a dog could teach lions. "All right, old friend," Jack said to Max as the dog led the cubs back. "We have 3 days. Let's make them count." Jack transformed the shed into a temporary home for the two lion cubs, using his expertise to check their health and care for them. They were dehydrated, hungry, and terrified, but fortunately had no serious injuries. Max refused to leave the cubs, even skipping meals to stay with them. Jack silently observed as Max licked the mud off the cubs' fur, coaxed them to eat the food Jack prepared, and taught them to play safely on the damp ground. In the shed, Jack named the two lion cubs. The larger one, with sharp eyes and darker fur, he called Leo. The smaller, more active and adventurous one was named Theo. Both responded to their names after just a few days, which surprised Jack about their intelligence. The following days brought a sight Jack had never witnessed in his long career. Max wasn't just caring for Leo and Theo, he was teaching them. The dog patiently guided the cubs on how to stalk through puddles, how to move in mud without sinking, and even how to clean themselves after playing. Leo and Theo began to mimic many of Max's behaviors from how he laid down to the sounds he made. On the second morning, with the sun still low on the desert horizon, Jack woke to find Max teaching Leo how to stalk. The dog lay hidden behind a small bush in the yard with only his eyes and ears showing. Leo, trying to imitate his father, also lay flat, though his technique was clumsy. Theo, not patient enough for this lesson, was running around, his tail constantly thumping the ground, ruining any attempt at hiding. Jack began recording his observations in an old notebook. Realizing this was a unique research opportunity on interspecies behavior rarely documented in science, he took photos and videos as Max taught Leo to lie and wait, then suddenly lunge forward to attack an old pillow. Theo, always more energetic, often disrupted the lesson by jumping in the middle, forcing Max to patiently start over. On the afternoon of the third day, right on the deadline Sarah had set, she returned to check. When Jack led her into the shed, surprise was evident on her face. Leo and Theo were no longer frightened, weak creatures, but had become agile and curious. They ran around Sarah's feet, exploring the new visitor with a natural curiosity of lions, but always maintaining a safe distance, a lesson Max had taught them. "I've never seen anything like this," Sarah admitted, watching Max teaching Leo and Theo how to cross a puddle without splashing. "He's not just caring for them, he's teaching them to be lions." Jack smiled, but knew that time was up. "I guess you'll be taking them now." Sarah looked at the scene before her once more, Max patiently guiding Theo on how to wash his face properly, while Leo focused on a beetle, practicing the stalking skills he had just learned. Something special was happening here, something that she, with all her experience with wildlife, had never witnessed. "I think we can extend the time a bit," Sarah said after a silence. "They're developing well, and there are some experts who would be very interested in what's happening here. But Jack, you understand this isn't a long-term solution, right?" Jack nodded. He understood better than anyone that Leo and Theo were lions, not pets. One day, they would become powerful and dangerous predators, unable to live in his shed forever. Sarah agreed to extend the time by 1 week on the condition that a veterinarian examined Leo and Theo's health. Jack happily accepted, knowing that with each passing day, the bond between Max and the cubs grew deeper. The veterinarian, an older man named Martin, whom Jack had known since his days at the rescue center, visited the next day. He couldn't hide his amazement at the sight of Max and the two lion cubs. "In 40 years of practice, I've never seen this," he said, watching Max teaching Leo and Theo how to drink water from a bowl without spilling. "It's not just protective instinct. Your dog is teaching them, Jack. He's transferring knowledge." Dr. Martin confirmed that Leo and Theo were perfectly healthy and developing well. In fact, he remarked that they were even developing better than lion cubs of the same age he had examined at zoos and reserves. "Perhaps there is something in Max's parenting method that we could learn from," he said before leaving Jack with more questions than answers. The week extension turned into 2 weeks, then 3. Leo and Theo grew rapidly, their small bodies gradually showing the contours of the powerful predators they would become. Jack converted part of the backyard into a safe play area for them with logs to climb and a small pool to learn swimming. One afternoon, when Leo and Theo were about 6 weeks from the day they arrived at Jack's, he witnessed an amazing moment. Max had placed a toy rabbit tied to a string that Jack could pull in the center of the yard. The dog lay flat, signaling for Leo and Theo to do the same. Then Max slowly approached the prey step by step, stopping whenever the toy rabbit moved. Jack gently pulled the string. Leo grasped the lesson immediately, mimicking Max's every move with amazing precision. Theo, as usual, was too excited to be patient, constantly jumping out of hiding, causing the prey to escape. Jack pulled the string hard. Max showed no disappointment. He patiently led Theo back to the starting position, sometimes gently carrying the mischievous cub by the neck, just as a mother lioness would do with her cubs. After many attempts, Theo finally learned the lesson of patience, and all three successfully hunted the toy rabbit together. Jack documented everything, creating a detailed record that he hoped would one day help conservation and wildlife rehabilitation efforts. He realized that what Max was doing could provide new insights into how to nurture orphaned animals so they could return to the wild. Each day brought new lessons from Max. The dog seemed to understand that Leo and Theo weren't puppies, but entirely different species with their own needs and instincts. He adjusted his teaching method to suit their lion nature, encouraging natural predatory behavior through carefully designed games. Leo, with his more focused and careful character, quickly became Max's excellent student. This cub learned to move silently, to stalk without being detected, and even how to use the surrounding environment for camouflage. Theo, though more active and impatient, still learned important lessons about teamwork and coordination in hunting. The strangest thing was how Max taught them about boundaries and rules. He established a gentle but effective discipline system, using soft growls to warn when they went too far or played too rough. As Leo and Theo began to show signs of increasing strength, Max taught them control, an invaluable lesson for creatures that would eventually become apex predators. Sarah continued to visit, initially weekly, then every 2 weeks. She brought appropriate food and documented Leo and Theo's development. Each time she came, she was amazed at their progress and the deepening bond with Max. "Researchers wouldn't believe it if I didn't document everything," she told Jack after watching Max teach Leo and Theo to swim in a small pool Jack had dug in the yard. "This challenges everything we know about animal behavior." When the cubs were about 10 weeks old, an interesting phenomenon began to occur. They started teaching back to Max. Leo especially would lead Max to places he wanted to explore or show the dog instinctive hunting techniques that he seemed to know naturally. Theo, with his more social character, would invite Max to join games he made up, often involving jumping and chasing. Jack realized this wasn't just a one-way relationship, but a genuine exchange, an unconventional family with complex dynamics and mutual respect. Max wasn't just a substitute father. He had become part of the small lion pride, and Leo and Theo had accepted him as a family member. One evening, when Leo and Theo were nearly 3 months old, Jack received a call from Sarah. Her voice was more serious than usual. "I've spoken with Dr. Rodriguez at the Sonoran Reserve," she said. "They've prepared a special area for Leo and Theo. They're big enough to move to where they belong, Jack." Jack looked out the window where Max was teaching Leo and Theo to stalk through desert bushes. The dog had become a patient and wise father, and the cubs had developed exceptionally under his guidance. But Jack knew Sarah was right. Leo and Theo were lions, not pets. They needed to live among their own kind, learn to be real lions. "Tomorrow?" Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll come in the morning." After hanging up, Jack went out to the yard where Max was still training Leo and Theo. In the desert sunset, he watched these three creatures, a dog who had found a new purpose and 2 lion cubs who had found an unexpected father and wondered if Max could understand why his adopted children had to leave. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He heard Leo and Theo playing in the shed, Max's soft growls when they got too noisy. He wondered if this was their last night together, and if so, whether Max knew it. Jack knew that no matter how special the bond between Max and the cubs was, Leo and Theo were growing quickly and would soon become too large and dangerous to keep at home. At the same time, the attachment between Max and them had become too deep to ignore. After a restless night, Jack came up with a solution. The next morning, he called Sarah and proposed a bold plan, a gradual transition process involving Max. Jack used all his industry connections and extensive experience to convince Sarah that this wasn't just a crazy idea. It could be a new method, benefiting both Leo and Theo while providing valuable data for conservation efforts. "Ojets, I want us to convince the reserve to try a special program," Jack explained. "Max and I will participate in Leo and Theo's reintegration process. We'll bring them to the reserve for short visits. allowing them to become familiar with the new environment and other lions while maintaining their bond with Max. Sarah was initially skeptical, but after reviewing the notes and videos Jack had collected over the past 3 weeks, she began to see potential in this plan. She promised to discuss it with the authorities at the reserve. A week later, good news arrived. The nearby wildlife reserve agreed to test the special program Jack had proposed. With Jack's expertise in wildlife and animal training, along with compelling data about the bond between Max and the cubs, the reserve saw a unique research opportunity on lion social behavior. The transition process began immediately. Jack and Max brought Leo and Theo to the reserve for short visits, initially just a few hours. At first, the cubs were anxious in the new environment, staying close to Max. But gradually, under Max's encouragement, they began to explore the larger area of the reserve and even interact with other lions kept there. What was amazing was how Max adapted to his new role. Instead of trying to keep Leo and Theo by his side, he seemed to understand that his mission was to help them integrate into their new world. He encouraged them to participate in activities with other lions, standing back to observe from a distance, only intervening when necessary. Researchers at the reserve began documenting everything, amazed by Max's emotional intelligence and Leo and Theo's adaptability. They realized that although raised by Max, the two cubs still retained their lion instincts. They may even have learned some skills from Max that they couldn't have learned from other lions. After 4 months of persistence, Leo and Theo had fully adapted to life at the reserve. They had grown significantly, no longer the tiny cubs Max had brought home in the mud. They had integrated with the other lions at the reserve, although researchers noted that they exhibited some unique behaviors, perhaps a legacy from their time being raised by Max. The reserve, impressed with Jack's involvement and his deep understanding of animal behavior, invited him to be a special advisor for a new program researching the use of dogs in nurturing orphaned wildlife. The story of Max and the 2 lion cubs became a case study, providing new insights into the ability to form cross-species bonds and their impact on wildlife development. During their final visit on a drizzly afternoon, Jack and Max stood outside the lion area watching Leo and Theo playing in the mud with other lions. They had become healthy, strong, and confident young lions, very different from the small, frightened creatures Max had led home. When Max barked softly, both Leo and Theo stopped, heads up. They looked toward Max and Jack, their eyes brightening with recognition. After a moment, they ran to the fence, not in an attacking posture, but with evident joy, like 2 clumsy lion cubs following Max. On that first day, Jack felt a tear roll down his cheek, not from sadness, but from realizing that sometimes the deepest bonds are formed in the most unexpected circumstances. And true love isn't about holding on, but knowing when to let go so those you love can become the best versions of themselves. Max, standing proudly beside Jack, seemed to understand that, too. The dog looked at Leo and Theo one last time, then turned away, ready to go home. His work was done. He had saved 2 lives, raised them, and now he knew when to let go. Driving home, Jack placed his hand on Max's head. "You did well, old friend," he whispered. The dog rested his head against Jack's hand, eyes gazing toward the horizon where the sun was setting behind the distant desert mountains, creating a new day, a new beginning for all.